No.
Oh, today's been a busy day.
Yes. Hello, and good evening, everyone. I want to call the meeting to order for the Oxnard Finance and Governance Committee for June 10th, 2025. Madam Clerk, may we have the roll call and posting of the agenda, followed with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Chair MacArthur,
Here?
Committee Member Rodriguez,
Present.
Committee Member Starr.
Here.
The agenda for the meeting was posted in the kiosk at City Hall, the Oxnard Public Library, the City Administrative Offices, and on the city's website on Tuesday, June 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can have everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is for items not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any speakers for this item?
Chair MacArthur, we have Jim Lavery, who has signed up to speak on this.
Wonderful. Go ahead, Mr. Lavery.
Thanks. Don't mean to prolong the meeting, but I just want to comment on the budget hearings. I wasn't able to attend. First of all, before I get critical, I want to commend Mr. Nguyen on the role he's had here since he got hired. Because I remember when he got hired 2014, 2015. It was chaotic here. People thought the city was on the brink of insolvency, or there was that possibility. There were a lot of people leaving the city. There's a brain drain, a lot of his institutional knowledge left. He came in and righted the ship, plus all those findings he got rid of. So it can't be said enough how important that was to stabilize the city. Having said that, we discussed, Mr. Sonstagard and city manager this week with email exchange, some of the questions I had about the budget, particularly the budget message. And one of the things he called for was kind of like a status quo budget and be careful for hard times coming, and I didn't buy that. And I looked at the budget and I said, well, what are the facts to me say? The city's finances, there's been a lot of shocks to the budget. First of all, you moved fire station number 8, plus community policing over to the general fund. That must be at least a $10 million hit. I think Mr. Sonstagard said the overall impact of the general fund has been $12 million transferred. Overall, that's permanent. I'm assuming that's all public safety, or mostly public safety. Plus, you're paying cash for street repairs in the ERP project. Now, I don't know how much that is, but it's going to be a substantial amount. Giving raises to employees. I think the number was $3.8 million. So, all the shocks to the budget. So I said, okay, well, that must not be a lot of fund balance. I look at the estimate for this year. It's something like $54 million in fund balance after all these shocks to the budget. So I'm saying, why isn't there room to fund the projects that when people voted for Measure E, like a sports park or a skating rink, why aren't they in this message? And the answer was basically, we're not going to have any money. So I didn't buy that. I said, well, you got all this money. You took $20 million out to fund PERS, which I think was a prudent thing, but mostly PERS. So you would have had $70 million if not for that. So I'm wondering if there's any way these issues could be looked at. Public-private partnerships, other ways to get these projects rolling, because the city needs signature projects, I think, to put it on the map. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Madam Clerk, any other speakers?
Chair MacArthur and committee members, that concludes our speakers in person and virtually for items not on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing that there are no other speakers, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And the only item I see here is the approval of the minutes for May 27, 2025 for Finance and Governance Committee. Do any members have any questions or comments on this item? No? Okay. I move to approve
I'll
the
second.
item. Thank you.
Chair MacArthur and committee members, we do not have any requests to speak on the information and consent agenda. Committee member Rodriguez?
Aye.
Committee member Stars? Excuse me.
Yes.
Chair MacArthur?
Yes,
And the motion carries 3-0. Thank you.
thank you. The next item on the agenda is item D1. This is from the Finance Department. This is the third amendment to the agreement with TG Consulting Services. The recommendation is that the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute a third amendment to the agreement with TG Consulting Services for the implementation of Tyler EPL licensing module to increase the contract amount by $70,000 for a total contract amount not to exceed $360,937.50, and extend the contract for 5 months to November 30th, 2025. And Ms. Sue is here, the Chief Financial Officer, to answer any questions, and we do have two speakers on this item. Any questions of staff on this item before we move to public speakers?
I definitely have questions, but if we have two speakers, I'd like to hear from them first.
Sounds good?
Yeah, that's
Okay, then we'll call them up first. Jim, come on up again, and then Ms. Alicia Parcell, you'll follow him.
Yeah, thanks. I just glanced this. I didn't spend a lot of time in this, but one of the things I did notice was that it's, I don't know, kind of struck me, not that there's anything wrong, but it's an ex-city employee who's getting this contract in a substantial amount. Plus the wording of the staff report kind of really bothered me, and it said, this is the only person who can do this job. Now, that's impossible. That's not an accurate statement. So that smacks, I wouldn't say desperation, but that's not well written. That should never be like that. And the bigger picture is, it seems with this ERP, every other week, almost every meeting, they're coming up asking for more money. Oh, we didn't, and it's always an unforeseen circumstance. So why do you have people, well, I'm saying, I want to say it nicely. If you can't foresee what's going to happen, well, how are you running this operation? Don't you need people who can foresee and not be coming up to council for more money? And you guys don't even think twice. You just grant it to them. Now, something happened a couple of weeks ago where there was money. The main contractor doesn't do this anymore, and we're not ready to move on, so we have to hire this other person who'd been doing it because we're not ready to transfer it. It's the same thing over and over again with this project. Now, to me, there's an opportunity cost. This is taking money away from other projects that I'd like to see funded. And the reason I was advocating for a sports park, I had a grandson who played on our travel team. He's too old now, he's in Oxnard. They used to have to go to all these places, West Covina, Riverside, Santa Clarita, and none of the kids look like them, But you have the Cowboys here, 1,500 miles they're coming, spending millions of dollars to be in this nice climate. But we should have that here. Why can't we have that here? I mean, it makes perfect sense. I know I'm digressing from the point, but where does it all end in this ERP? It can't be, it's to me, I hate to say this, but it's like a money pit to me. Money keeps getting put in, but we never know. Do you have the confidence that this thing is going to be over? Obviously, it's way over budget, but there's got to be a limit on how much can we spend on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Ms. Parcell?
I think Mr. Lavery and I are sharing a brain today. Some pieces of this will be redundant. I literally had the phrase money pit on my paper before he said it. I realized that a lot of people in this room were not here when the project began to change our financial software over to the Tyler system. So I likely had some historical knowledge that even a lot of people in this room may not even have. Without digging back through the old meetings, I believe what I'm about to say is at least in the ballpark, if not exactly on the nose. But the first time I heard about the project to switch financial systems and this item is a piece of that. I believe it was described to cost about $7 million and take 2 to 3 years. And it's been way more than 3 years, and we have spent way more money than that. This item is just a tiny piece of that project, and just this piece alone is now up to $360,000 just for this one consulting contract. I really think the public needs to get an update on the total cost to date of this implementation, the detailed reasons, and that word is important, detailed reasons for the time and cost overruns. Even the reasons given for this item are vague, unforeseen delays. What does that mean? Who knows? It has become a money pit, and I think some oversight needs to happen on what's going on, that this is so far off track of what we were originally told it would cost and how long it would take. And then you have former employees that are getting contracts to help implement it, and it's just, it all feels like something has gone awry. So I really think the public should get an update on where this project has gone wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parcell. Madam Clerk, does that conclude the speakers?
Yes, it does, Chair MacArthur. Thank
you. We'll move to you, Councilmember Starr. Go ahead.
Thanks. I think when the ERP project first came out, and I seem to recall the $7 or $8 million figure as well, I think I remember saying that, yeah, take that number and triple it, because that's probably what it's going to be when it's all said and done with all the training and everything else that goes along with it. But I don't know if you can remind me, Ms. Sue, you're relatively new here, so you might not have all the historical information here, but do you remember when we actually started the Tyler system, roughly, implementing that?
I do not have that knowledge,
Okay.
but Javier might
Javier,
have
that's
more.
fine. I assume there's going to be some question I'm going to ask you that maybe Javier will be in a better position to answer.
And I'm relatively new as well. So
Yeah.
Javier Chagoyo Lázaro, Chief Financial Officer, City of Oxnard. I understand that when the city started evaluating the implementation of the ERP and going for proposals was at the end of 2018, early 2019, it's my understanding. And of course, then the pandemic hit, so a lot of things have to be put on hold. And I wouldn't disagree that the cost of things go up as the time goes by. So when we delay implementing certain projects and certain contracts are postponed, the cost of implementing those or executing those projects, either is in the technology field or on the public works arena, usually those costs go up. But it's important to understand that there was a delay driven by the pandemic that caused the delay. So after that, the agreements were in place, and the first model of the ERP was completed. All the configuration of the training was completed, was the financial side, and was being started to be used by the city in October 22. That's when the city started. And there's a stabilization period after you start with a new ERP system. Fiscal year 24-25 has been therefore the second year that the city has produced financial statements with the ERP.
Right, okay. So in the staff report, it talks about this unforeseen delay in the implementation of the Tyler EPL licensing module. But I was curious, as was Jim Lavery, but can you tell us what the nature of the unforeseen delay was in that implementation of that licensing module? And has the underlying issue been resolved, or do we expect further delays?
The main driver has been the rotation of staff. The person that was, and some of this is, of course, is just preceding my time with the city, but the staff that was in charge of the billing and licensing, and that's just only a portion of the EPL, that is related to this agreement that is in front of the committee left the city. And there's been
Could you repeat that?
the person that was supposed to lead this process for the city left the city.
Got it.
And then we have to basically, and there's been an additional staff turnover in that area that has basically just forced us to delay that process. So it's mainly driven for staff turnover, and the billing and license component has come out to be a little bit more complicated than anticipated as well.
Okay. So I was going to ask what other vendors we've approached to do this particular work. I'm going to pass that on that question. I'm going to ask a little bit different question. So I just want to verify my understanding here. So on page 8, where it says TG Consulting Services has over 29 years of experience in municipal licensing with the City of Oxnard's Billing and Licensing Division as the former Treasury Supervisor and License Collector before retirement. Now, I'm guessing it's not TG Consulting that services, it really has all this experience. It is the proprietor of this company. So I assume that based on the paperwork I see here that this must be Tammy Gutierrez, who retired from the city in, I think, 2018.
That's correct.
Okay. And now she's back as a consultant. And I do see from public records that Ms. Gutierrez retired from the city sometime in 2018. And I see that according to Transparent California, she was making about $61,000 a year in a base salary, and she's now making about $45,000 a year in pension. What kind of confuses me, though, is when I look at page 19, so there was a description of the scope of services in the original contract, along with the dates of completion. Can you tell me, I mean, some of them was going to be, I mean, this contract started in 2000, at the beginning of 2023. We're supposed to have this, I guess, to fully train all licensing staff and all aspects of the city's licensing process to include but not limit to processing and issuance of business tax certificates, permits, and any additional licensing requirements. That was going to be done by March 31, 2023. Is that done now, or is that something that we still need to do?
That was done in the
Good.
scope of this amendment. The TG Consulting Services role is to complete, assist the city and assist the consulting firm and assist the software vendor to complete the development of the licensing module, to complete the testing, complete the configuration, complete the whole implementation process for the licensing module. And then after the licensing module goes live, she will also assist with the relevant training because she's part of the subject matter expert who helps with all the development, configuration, testing, and all the process of the licensing module.
Okay. I guess what kind of confuses me here, and I'm glad that piece has been done. I guess what confuses me is that it would seem to me that between 2018 when she retired and 2023 when she started this contract, I would have thought that we would have already, trained all the staff to do this job. And I'm just surprised that we need to bring back somebody out of retirement from several years earlier to do this. We don't have anybody on staff that's a subject matter expert. Is she? I mean,
So let me explain that to you.
Yeah.
Since Tammy retired, there's complete turnover, 100% turnover at the licensing division. The manager level has a medical condition who had to retire. All the staff who used to work at the licensing, there was only one staff. So I'll say 99% turnover. So there's only one staff who's currently working there that's worked at Tammy's time or for 7, 8 years. All the staff who is currently working at licensing had average of 1 year or less than 3 months of experience.
How many licensing staff do we have?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and plus the supervisor, 6 staff. So the supervisor started in April of '24. The code compliance inspector has about 7 to 8 years of experience. And 3 staff started in January this year, and 1 staff had about 1 year experience. So the turnover there was really high. So between 2018 to 2023, that was some staff who used to work there has little by little left. And then when the contract started, that was part of the scope for Tammy, the teaching consulting services, to train the new staff. But by the time the contract with teaching consulting services was drafted, that was part of the role. And then it's the First Amendment, Second Amendment, now we're looking at the Third Amendment. This Third Amendment really is focusing on complete, like I said, implementation of the licensing module, not to train the staff. That right now we have the supervisor to cover, we have the new staff to learn. So her role really is to help the city to get to the finish line, to get the touchdown.
Can't the supervisor get us to the touchdown on this?
I do not believe we have that much of the resources. The supervisor has to manage the day-to-day operation, and this is really a full-time commitment.
Yeah. Mrs. Sue, if I hear you correctly, the reason Mrs. Gutierrez had to be brought back is because she's a subject matter expert. Because of the high turnover, we don't have anybody in-house to provide the adequate
Correct.
training that's necessary for this item. That's what I'm hearing.
That's correct.
So let me just kind of recap what I'm seeing here. So we started off as an 18-month consulting agreement that was going to end in June of 2024. It was for $122,000. It was increased by $23,000 in the First Amendment. It was the Second Amendment extended the agreement for another year and an extra $146K. And we're now on the Third Amendment and a total of $361K. So what started off as a 18-month agreement is now almost double the time and triple the amount originally contracted. I can see that what went wrong, I guess, is just the staff turnover mostly.
And also that's the implementation of the ERP system.
Right.
Because the ERP system is not finished and it's being pushed to the second half of this year. And it's critical to have teaching consulting services to assist the completion of it. And the expectation is that the second half of the year, the licensing module will complete the implementation, will go live, and will have the related training that should help assist in the second half of 2025. And that's the end of the contract by November 2025 extension.
And how likely is it that we're going to be back again here in November 2025 with a request for another extension? Would you say not possible? There's no way we're coming back, or you say it's really likely, or we're just not sure?
I don't think that it will go beyond November 2025.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilwoman,
No,
Rodriguez, you have a
I just,
question?
I see where you're coming from, and I appreciate our efforts of trying to be resourceful with the limited resources that we have as a city, but I also understand being in the community college system right now with the Department of Education, I am at the point where, as a manager, it's my job to hire the talent and try to retain the talent, because this is a very unique situation we're in. So I cannot tell you if in 6 months we might be having a similar conversation again, but I'd rather have a project be completed and done well than for us to keep limping away. And I unfortunately think that the city of Oxnard we keep putting Band-Aids instead of targeting the root cause, which is we should attract and retain talent. And when it comes to a unique system, I'm not saying only one person can be the hero. I'm just saying in this specific situation, it seems like we're in a catch-22. So for me, personally, I'd like to move the recommended action. I hope we can, have the checks and balances and the accountability to make sure we deliver a project from beginning to end. But I also know that the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost us, or us, the taxpayers. Those are my 2 cents. But thank you for your feedback and your answers to your questions.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So we have a motion. I will move to second, but I do hear your concerns, Councilmember Starr, but it sounds like from what Ms. Sue explained, you had other conditions such as the high employee turnover that created a barrier to implement this.
So
This
I
item.
do have a request.
Sure.
As part of the rates and cost exhibit on page 20, it says that the consultant shall provide the Director of Billing and Licensing weekly updates on staff training progress. I was wondering if we have those.
Like I said, that training happened in the first part of the regional contract. That was before my time.
Got it.
That started, I started in January this year. That was back in 23, 24. So right now, none of that was happening. Her sole focus is implementation of the ERP system right now,
Right.
to push that to the end.
I know that we've certainly, where I work, we certainly went through a really big ERP implementation back in 2007, and it was all consuming, and we all worked a lot of overtime to make it work. You had to do your normal job while you were also doing the conversion. It's never easy, but you get it done. I guess I'm just not comfortable with paying somebody $125 an hour to do this, especially, she's probably a wonderful person. I don't know her, but we used to pay her $30 an hour as an employee, and now she's making, quadruple that.
Yeah.
So I'm just really, I'm just uncomfortable.
Then, okay. We have Madam Clerk, we have a first and a second. We're ready for the vote.
Committee Member Starr,
No.
Chair MacArthur,
Yes.
Committee Member Rodriguez,
Yes.
and the motion carries 2-1. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the next item on the agenda. And this is item D2 from the Finance Department. The subject, First Amendment to Trade Services Agreement with InfoSend for utility bill and business license tax form printing, inserting and mailing services. The recommendation is that the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute a First Amendment to the Trade Services Agreement with InfoSend for utility bill and business tax form printing, inserting and mailing services to increase the contract amount by $971,100 for a total contract amount not to exceed $1,967,634, and extend the contract for 2 additional years from June 30th, 2027. And Ms. Sue is here again, the Assistant Chief Financial Officer, to answer any questions we may have. Go ahead, Councilmember Starr. Thank you.
Chair MacArthur and committee members, we do not have any speakers in person or virtually for this item. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Madam Clerk.
So on page 35, it mentioned that the current contract was awarded to InfoSend in June of 2022 after an RFP process was conducted in February 2022 and will expire on June 30th, 2025. Did we also use an RFP process for this proposed extension? And if not, how do we decide that an ERP process is no longer needed if not?
There's a city policy or ordinance that allows that for these, every 5 years we go to RFP. But if the contract is 3 years, the city's policy allows the 2-year extension.
Okay. And based on my reading, it looks like the $971,000 includes the cost of postage. Is that right?
Yes, 80% of the contract really is to cover the postage.
Right.
And in the past, since the contract was assigned in 2022,
Postage,
US
yeah.
postage has increased 5 times. So now, and then there's another increase scheduled in July of this year. So the contract, really 80% is the postage there, the increase, and in anticipation of even the future increase.
Right, and I think bulk rate is about 40 cents per piece right now compared to 73 cents for first class. Does that sound about right? I think so.
Somewhere maybe
Right.
in that, I have to check what the bulk rate. I know the first class is 73 cents right now, and then they're going to increase in July for 10%, which will go up. And we do get the discount with this vendor because their facility and their have the post office within the facility that allow them, and their certification with USPS allows them to pass that discount to the city. So they receive the lowest postage and pass that to the city as well. And if I give you a number, if we break it down by months of the 12 months, so you're really looking at about $36,000 per month for the expense that is necessary for the BNL to send out daily utility bills to the customer. And also monthly, we have about 45,000 utility bills customers for water, wastewater, and refuse, which is trash collection. And we have about 2,000 renew notice for all the businesses, about 12,000 businesses that needs to renew their business tax certificate or apply, the new business apply for the business tax certificate. If you're looking at on the average of $12 million of utility revenue that we bring in monthly, and about $650,000 of business taxes we're bringing in monthly, this $36,000 expense is about 0.24% of the expense to generate that much of a revenue. We need this vendor to enable us to design the bill, to print the bill, and to mail the bill to the customer so the customer can pay the bill. So this is really necessary trade services that we rely on to generate revenue for the city on the utility billing and in business taxes collection.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement with you. I mean, to me, it looks like the city will be mailing about 1.1 million pieces of mail through this vendor, and for $971,000, that's really not a horrible price considering that this amount includes the postage. So, for that reason, I'm pretty comfortable with this agreement. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that a motion?
It sounds like a motion to me. That's what it sounded, yeah.
If there's no other questions, I'll make the motion to approve this.
Wonderful. And sounds we got a second with you, Councilwoman?
No, I have a second, and I appreciate the breakdown of just the increase. Again, the longer we wait, the more expensive things seem to be right now, but I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr., for doing the due diligence of finding this vendor to provide this service for us. Thank you for that. So
Thank
we have a
you.
first and a second, Madam Clerk. Call for the vote.
Chair MacArthur,
Yes.
Committee Member Rodriguez,
Aye.
Committee Member Starr,
Yes.
and the motion carries 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the final item on the agenda for this committee, and that's D3, Information Technology Department. The subject entails an agreement with Toshiba Business Solutions for printers and scanners. The recommendation is that the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute a 5-year agreement with Toshiba America Business Solutions for the purpose of citywide management print, scan, and copy services in the amount of $745,840.80 plus a 10% contingency amount of $74,584.08 to cover future needs or incidental costs for a total authorized amount of $820,424.88. And Mr. Rubin is here, the Chief Information Officer, to answer any questions we may have. Madam Clerk, are there any speakers on this particular item?
Chair MacArthur and committee members, we do not have any speakers in person or virtually for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll proceed to member comments or discussion. Go ahead, Councilmember Starr.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Rubin.
Good evening.
Your report is very good. I especially appreciate your attempt to make it an apples-to-apples comparison, and that you took into account inflation. I was delighted that even without taking into account the inflation that has been experienced these last few years, and even in nominal terms, there is still a savings compared to what was spent previously. So definitely my hat is off to you for your involvement in getting it to this point. I have a couple questions. I assume that toner and other consumables are paid for separately. That's separate from this agreement, or am I wrong?
Good evening, committee members. Rob Rubin, Chief Information Officer. No, the toner are included for the citywide, so that's all part of it. What isn't is paper.
Okay, all right, that's amazing. So now you stated in here that the IT department is taking ownership of this agreement from the purchasing department, and together with the vendor will efficiently manage the city's printing needs. I'm just kind of curious, what role does the purchasing department play here, if any, as this part of this process for this?
I wouldn't be able to speak to their role in how that contract was managed previously, but I have a practice that we use for IT vendor management. And in the case of Toshiba, it would include what we would call QBRs, or quarterly business reviews.
Okay.
So we'll be looking at their performance against the SLA targets. So we'll be looking at, they have a portal into their problem management system. So we would be able to review if we have certain devices that are having problems, and having an ability to be more proactive about how we deal with issues as they arise. So I can't speak to how it's being done today, but we do have someone from purchasing if that's important.
So, I mean, it sounds like there's a team effort though here, right?
Absolutely.
There is purchasing involved as well. You always want purchasing to be involved with something like this because it's really easy for, just for segregation of duties and that sort of thing. You don't want to have a situation where friends are getting the agreements and that sort of thing. So I am curious how it is working with purchasing in this case.
Yep, and I'll be happy to let Jennifer answer that question. But the reference for this was in the contract management, not the procurement.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
Good evening, Jennifer Yates, Purchasing Manager. I'm fairly new to the city as well, 3 years. So this was already, when I came as the Purchasing Manager to the city of Oxnard, there were quite a few things that just kind of landed in purchasing per se. And the Toshiba copier so there was a request for proposal that was done. Toshiba was selected, and somehow the contract management ended up in purchasing. So when I came here 3 years ago, it was my mission to kind of take a look at all those things that were in purchasing and get them in the right department. So that's kind of how it's evolved from purchasing into now IT, which is the correct department to run these devices, to manage them.
Okay, so on page 80, it says Toshiba was awarded the contract for the period of February 1st, 2019 through January 31st, 2024. And since then, the city has been leasing the same equipment on a monthly basis, and Toshiba has been servicing the MFDs as needed, multifunction devices, right? I guess my question is, since the contract ended in January 31, 2024, do you have any insight as to why the execution of a new agreement has been delayed for this long?
I think it's just a coordination of efforts, getting everybody on board to make that move. So we've been working closely with Toshiba and IT to make this transition. As far as the delay, I can't speak to that, but something we've been working on since the contract had expired.
So one thing that I would think would happen, at least from an accounting perspective, is that typically you're going to have a purchase order in the system. It's got, it could have an end date. And usually when it gets to the point where the contract is expiring, then the ability to actually pay that vendor is turned off. So I don't know how it works in the finance department when it comes to that sort of thing. How do we prevent paying for something where we don't actually have a contract or a purchase order for it?
So typically, you'd want a contract or an agreement, obviously, but in this case, it was kind of a grandfather. So Toshiba was working with us. We were still under the lease rate of what was under the contract.
Right.
We were just interim between the contracts. So we were still paying for the services under the rate. Toshiba was kind enough to grant us that until we could get to council or F&G to get this new agreement in order.
Okay, well, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rodriguez, any questions?
But at that point, I think, did I read somewhere where we were getting quarterly reports but monthly payments? So it was delayed, but were we still just operating under, basically, when you say you grandfathered the contract, we're just honoring the price tag and all.
Correct,
But
correct. And the invoices were being paid. Those
Monthly
go
or
through-
quarterly?
Those go through our accounts payable, but my guess would be it's a monthly payment.
So I think what my
monthly
colleague
invoice.
was asking was really, how do we continue paying? Or at least maybe that's a question for us internally with
That's what
checks
I
and
understood
balances.
as well. Is that what you're asking?
I guess at some point, I'd like to understand from finance, when get presented with an invoice and there's an agreement that's expired, how do you decide that you're still, you know, how do you decide you're still paying it? And then how do you decide to knock on someone's door and go, hey, we need to fix this?
As is mentioned in the report, this agreement was kind of renewed on a monthly basis, and that was the basis to make the payment.
So we defaulted to monthly renewal versus the 5-year contract that we're now,
It's
Potentially
like when
approving.
you have a month, an annual rent agreement that becomes on a month-to-month basis, so that's kind of.
So basically, the approach is that this is kind of like a lease where it expires, it becomes a month-to-month, as long as you continue to use it.
well, as long as they honor the price tag that they originally had. If Toshiba would have changed their price tag from one month to the other,
Yep.
we'd probably be stopping the press. Okay, thank
Yep.
you so much for that feedback.
I'm pretty comfortable with this.
Yeah.
I'd be in favor of this.
Yep, I second that motion by Councilmember Starr.
Committee Member Rodriguez,
Aye.
Committee Member Starr,
Yes.
Mayor MacArthur,
Yes,
and this motion carries 3-0. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Rubin, very much. Yeah. Does anyone have any items for future agendas? Go ahead, Councilmember Starr.
Yeah, given the requests at the time of, earlier in the meeting, I think I would like a report on what the original forecast was for the cost of acquiring and implementing the Tyler system, including training costs and the amount we spent to date and how much it's forecast to be spent in the future. And, you know, an understanding of, you know, what is causing the cost to balloon the way they have. So that's one request for an item. I guess there's a second request. What I'd like to do is, I'd like to know, do we have other former city employees that are performing services for the city? You know, let's say going back, say the last, I don't know, 5 years. If we could have a listing of that, maybe see, you know, it may be very minor, but if we can have a listing of that, what roles they had before, what the compensation's like now versus when they were an employee. And maybe we don't have any, but if we do have some, I'd like to have a better understanding.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Starr.
Well, and I think with that, I don't know if that's policy or necessarily, that seems like it might be like on the ground, like a manager's responsibility versus us as policy. So maybe any policies that are attached to that, because like, maybe we are allowed to, I know a lot of folks who retire because they've already put in 30 years worth of work in their field, and then they have a certain skill set. So I don't know, are you asking at a policy level, or are you looking for the nuts and bolts of what's happening?
I guess I'm looking for a little bit of both.
Okay.
I guess one thing that I'd like to know is, I don't know if CalPERS has any sort of restrictions on somebody who retires coming back to work for the city, whether it's a consultant or as an employee. Maybe there's a distinction there.
I know that for us in education, it's typically wait 6 months before you can come back as a part-timer or as a specialized, expert. But, and maybe that would be helpful, just because I don't want to lose out on talent, and I also don't want somebody to take the hit because,
Right.
they feel like they have to stay.
I get it.
Or on something like that, I don't know, Councilmember Starr, if it's perhaps a conversation, like a side conversation to learn more about CalPERS and what their restrictions are to have somebody come back.
I'm fine with that being
Okay.
offline.
Thank you, Councilmember Starr.
And actually, I'm probably comfortable with the whole item being offline, if that's something that makes it easier. If I can have just a report about who's been working for us and how it came to be that, and they were former employees.
Okay, without having to come back to this committee or full council, just a sideline conversation?
I don't think it has to come back to this
Okay.
committee, but if I look at it and I have, concerns,
Sure.
then maybe I'll ask that. But I don't think it has to come before us.
So maybe the ask is just, maybe just a sideline conversation, provide this information.
Yeah, maybe the city manager can talk to me offline about it.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, there be no further items on the agenda. And without objection, we are adjourned, everyone. Thank you very much.